Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get a city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get a city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1304 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Getting hip to the hip. An evening for the Downey Wenjack Fund on September 1st. Be there. The Moment Lab. Brand marketing and strategy, PR, advertising, and production. You need The Moment Lab and Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his triumphant return to Toronto Mic'd, he's got a big announcement to make. It's FOTM Mike Richards. Welcome back, Mike.
Hi. Sorry.
I noted when I saw you, you had a long drive to get here. Firstly, I'm honored you made the long drive to be here in person.
Yeah, thanks Google Maps for taking me on all the worst roads. I don't understand. Like when I finally got here, going, well, I know where I am now. Why wouldn't they just say Lakeshore to Islington? Oh no,
Really?
take a left on Cornhole. Go on Cornhole Road. And I'm like, what?
Okay, I forgive you for your tardiness. We are going to cook with gas here because we have a hard stop at 12, but that gives us a good 70 minutes, all killer, no filler. Is that math right? Yes. Okay, my math is correct. You've got a big announcement to make, but I just wanted to say that you look trim. Like this is the thinnest. I think you look pretty fit and healthy. How are you doing health-wise these days?
Well, this is the shape that I am now is the shape that I was in up till just pre-cancer, probably what it was. Like most people assume that when you have those kinds of issues, you get thin, right? It's people they think that. But the thing is, there are times where because of what it did, and for me it was rectal cancer. Mm-hmm. In the early 2000s, it seemed like I just really couldn't control anything about my being, and so sure, there was probably some lifestyle issues in Calgary. But it also was when I wasn't aware that I had it. I had no idea. And so my metabolism just got out of whack. And so for the better part, I would say if this is 2023, I would be safe in saying that probably for over 20 years, the person that I look like, especially on TSN, because when I look at those pictures and those videos, like I can't watch it. I never thought I looked like that. As most people who weren't that, I was never big. I mean, I was an athlete most of my life. I never ever thought that I would be, that sloppy looking, that big. So I was looking at pictures the other day of a trip that I was on, and I was, I was horrified. But that's what, being off the rails physically does. And so since that time, especially 2 years ago when I had the reversal, I'm now back to 170
You're fighting
something.
weight.
Yeah. So it's
we couldn't even take a piss at the Air Canada Center without staring at that handsome mug of yours. You were lining the bathrooms.
But that was probably 40. I'm almost 45, sometimes 50 pounds lighter than I was. Even I tried to hide it as best I could. I mean, that's what you do. You hide it all the time. You're like Ann Wilson from Heart. You're wearing a lot of black, a lot of walking behind the shade of trees.
Poor Anne. I think she
one
listens.
One of the greatest rock singers of all time. Let's get that straight.
No doubt. Okay, so because I know you have a big announcement, so we're just setting the table here. So bear with me. I need a half an hour to run through your previous 5 episodes. Just kidding. But why don't you crack that beer on the mic? So Great Lakes beer sent over fresh, but right on the mic. So lift. You get closer.
Okay.
So that's a lager, Mr. Richards. And again, it's here. I know I'm not drinking because it's too early for me, but you're a rock star here. Pretend I'm drinking.
I'm an Irish person, so it's just not that early,
It's only 10:53 a.m. Yeah, it's almost 11 o'clock. You can drink on the patio of Great Lakes at 11 a.m., I believe. So
it's great beer. Like, look, I know people, and he's going to say it's great beer because it's free. and he's got a problem. No, it is from the first time that we've had this. These guys, the beer's fantastic. I see them all over the place now. They've grown. I mean, they've grown quite a bit since the first time.
I'll take credit for that.
They do it, of course. That's why you advertise on a show that's popular.
So let me run down quickly, because this is your 6th appearance. So you got your jacket after the 5th appearance. Let me run down this very quickly. January 2016. So 2016, January is when we first met. You came over for episode 156. Mike chats with TSN Radio 1050 morning show host Mike Richards about his years on the Fan 590, the team, that was quite the chat, Calgary's Fan 960, and why he chose 1050 over 590. We also discussed TSN Radio ratings going against Dean Blundell and his battle with, well, not Dean's battle, unfortunately yours, but his battle with rectal cancer. And that was a great debut. So that was January 2016. So we've now known each other, if I do that math, 7+ years.
Yes.
You came back in February 2017. This is episode 219. Mike chats with sports broadcaster Mike Richards about what happened at TSN Radio 1050. Apparently, I got you fired there. And what exactly Raw Mike Richards will be. So that's where you kind of unveiled. What was the plan at that point? It's just, we're going to walk through these chapters. And so you left 1050, and when you came back in February 2017, that was to announce the Raw Mike Richards podcast?
Yeah, I mean, the plan was, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I had all these great plans. If you listen
to that show. Did Drake ever drop by?
No, he did not.
You told me Drake was going to drop by.
No. That's what I was told. They told me a lot. You're going to shoot in 3D or 360 or whatever.
Who told you this, may I ask?
I can't divulge the name.
So, see, I need to learn how to bullshit people because maybe I'm a terrible business person, but I simply cannot. I will tell you the truth, but it sounds like somebody told you Tariq was going to hang with you.
You know, you end up sounding, it's kind of Trumpish, right? When you do, there's going to be a lot of great things, we're going to shoot in 3D. That's what we call it, 3D. This is what, and of course it was horrible. I couldn't stand it. It was like the worst. 6 months. Now you learn things on the fly, but you go from corporate big time radio and of course on national television for
in the bathrooms of the Air Canada Centre.
Yeah, and then your people are telling you don't stand there. It was a very humbling and crushing experience, probably, I would say.
But then you came back in November 2018. This is episode 395, and here's my description I wrote at the time. Mike Richards makes a big announcement. So this is the same description I could use for this episode.
It's going to be very big, very huge, very exciting.
Announcement that you were going to Saga 960?
Yes.
Okay. So good. We're building something here. We're building it from scratch. Okay. May 2019, you come back. And that's episode 460. And Mike catches up with Mike Richards, who has plenty to say and announcements to make. So again, I notice a trend here. Listen, this is a big announcement today. But if you say big announcement too many times, it becomes a boy who cried wolf. But this is a big announcement today. So do you remember at all? So May 2019. What was that announcement?
So I couldn't. I'm assuming that was probably just before COVID.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. Well, it's a year before COVID. So COVID's in 2019 is COVID. March 2020. 2020 is COVID. Sorry. So March 2020 is COVID. That visit was May 2019.
So being on the tiny station, trying to get it to a place that was a commercial revenue generating station, because to that point it was a circus. It was a weird puppet show on crack.
I have questions about that place.
It was. Very difficult to find footing, and we kind of were starting to do that. I mean, I was starting to basically, myself and Dave Bastel,
right
at that point, what anyone would consider to be a full-time salary through the sponsorship. It was not terrible money.
Okay, good.
And the response to it was it was so hard, because there's something lost in translation. The Panu family had been and still are substantial in Indian programming. So
and they own Saga 960.
Yes. Amongst a lot of other things, including when you go up into those big channels, the 1,900 and whatever that, where you see all the words you can't read or understand.
Right.
And it's basically all prayers. It's religious programming. And he is enormous. That is Ravinder Panu Singh.
What religion is this?
Punjabi.
Oh, that's a religion. I got to plead some ignorance here. Okay.
Sikh. So he's Sikh.
Okay,
he's Sikh.
Gotcha.
Actually, the first man probably in Canada to show up on television in a turban. I would believe that's the correct trivia. When he started at what do we call it, MTV back at the time. So CF
CFMT?
CMT. So because I think we actually
You're watching
did call
47, Cable Fun.
Yeah, it would have been him. He would have been
Wow.
on there, and he wore a turban.
Okay. And so he's a groundbreaker. Okay, so
totally.
this family owns Saga 960. So I'm going to hold on my Saga 960 because I'm almost done your 5 episodes, and then we can get to the big announcement. But you did come back in January 2020. So this is just pre-pandemic. We were probably hearing rumors of this Wuhan virus happening in China. So January 2020. In this episode 575, that's a good round number, by the way, Mike chats with Mike Richards about his upcoming surgery, his show on 960, why 590 and 1050 suck, and what's wrong with sports radio today. I feel like that's an evergreen conversation. Like, and again, we still have a whole hour. So we got the announcement, but maybe during this hour, if you don't mind, letting us know what you think of the programming on 590 and 1050 now. That would be fantastic. But here, let's get to the announcement, and then we'll chat. I love that you're here.
Well, you have to include your last sentence for this all to sort of tie in and make sense. So
Yes.
over that period of time and being at Saga, I thought it would be a good place to be safe while the rubble was falling in sports media. I mean, it was just, everything was crashing down. You know, my confusion originally over being, you know, having my job taken away from me at TSN 1050, I look back on it now, and I was sort of Lisa LaFlamme before Lisa LaFlamme was. Like, why would you take away the guy that was the center of that universe at the time? And why would you, like, why? And of course it's Bell, and it's nothing but money.
Well, can I ask this? Because a fellow FOTM, so you're an FOTM, of course, friend of Toronto Mike, and one of my favorite FOTMs. But Michael Landsberg's also an FOTM. So Landsberg gets that morning show. They've since parted ways, obviously. And Landsberg came on for his exit interview. And you can listen and discuss amongst yourselves how genuine he was in that. That's for you to decide. But Landsberg's not working for cheap, right? He wasn't working for $45,000 a year.
Well, I think what had happened was they were going to bring his TV show to an end.
Off the record.
So he also was a major part of the Bell Let's Talk.
Big time.
So Bell, being the machine that they are, wasn't going to sit there. At least this is my belief anyways, and
sure.
Michael could tell me different.
Right.
There's no way they were just going to cut him loose in the middle of their big propaganda
PR disaster.
machine.
PR disaster.
I'll call it propaganda.
But if you fire, okay, and because Bell Let's Talk, if you notice, they kind of took a year off. Like, I think after the Lisa LaFlamme, and you're right, you were kind of the Lisa LaFlamme before Lisa LaFlamme. But in that environment post LaFlamme, Bell Media took a year off. There was almost no Bell Let's Talk activity that hit me this past February or whatever, right? Like, they took a year off.
Well, they kind of had to, the heat on it. I mean, I had talked about this on my podcast. So that's 4 years ago.
Right.
Exactly what this was, which was a beard, you know, for this propaganda of we want to help people. Now, two things about that. One, I think it did start conversations about mental illness, like legitimately
reducing the stigmatization.
Yeah, I really do. I think the people that came in at that time and the people that talked openly about some of those issues, we'd never talked about it before. So that is good.
Right.
But that's the evil genius part. They're able to hide that and then gas entire stations and hundreds of families and hundreds. Like, it just came part and parcel, but they got greedy with it. They got greedy with the firing, right. And when they went to Lisa LaFlamme, they went one too far. To me, that was the line in the sand where people said, you know what? I don't think they're very sincere about helping people.
Interesting.
And then it just was like, we better not do this, because then you saw all the memes, all the great comments that were, you know, probably 5 years too late. However, accurate. And I think at that point, someone must have said, you know, I think people are kind of catching on to what we're doing here. We talk about how much money we raised, and then we fire hundreds of people like the next day. Yeah. And then when we talk about our quarter earnings, and they're like huge in the billions, and then we fire all these people. You know what? I think people are catching on to this. And I honestly believe, obviously not in that manner, but to a degree, someone said, yeah, we might want to take a step back on this one.
And they did. So I will say, I mean, next to death, I think losing your job is the most traumatic mental health experience you're going to have, really. Like that's, so you're right. It seems kind of
So you can imagine what happens when you have both.
disingenuous.
This is what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm on the cancer table, and then it's like, by the way, we're taking your job away from you.
And you were
What do I have
literally
left?
so when they fired you, you were literally, I'm trying to remember the details now. I know you've told me in the past, but you were literally being treated for your cancer, right?
Well, when they made that decision, Overdrive had just sort of started at that point, which was good because it was the right thing to do for them, like to do that show.
Right.
So I just thought, you'd have ourselves in the morning. That would be myself and Dave Bastel, and you'd have Overdrive in the afternoon. It made all the sense in the world. Like anyone, I don't care who you are, consultant. This was a perfect, bookend to what you're supposed to do in the day.
Right.
But what I didn't know was, and no one could have known, is this is the start of Bell coming in with a crowbar to TSN, opening it up and just starting to rip shit out of it because they just didn't want to pay the cost. Because this is, if you remember, it's all a domino effect. Once they get rid of me and my salary, they know they're going to gas the Michael Landsberg show. So then they easily just put him in for exactly 5 years. So it's almost like the golden handshake. I'm gone. He's going to be gone. So they already. It was very methodical in the way in which they did this, which was to get rid of all that money.
So you were a victim of cost cutting. Do you think Bell Media, and again, we're going to get back to Saga 960 and the big announcement in a moment. I know people are excited about that. But do you think Bell Media gives a shit about sports radio?
No. I don't think Bell gives a shit about radio, period. The iHeart Radio, it's the no heart radio. You're garbage. They don't care about their people. They got into an industry, to kill it? I was just talking to Jeff Lumby yesterday. Lumby was on my show yesterday from France.
FOTM Jeff Lumby, of course.
And he's going, why would you allow, because they're the Death Star. I mean, that's really what they are. And until the CRTC wants to act upon it, and they never will. Like, if you're waiting for the good ending or the happy story for Bell and the big companies, it ain't going to happen. I mean, look at your cell phone bills. It's not going, they're going to run this country any way they want. They have the hammer. So everything is money related. So people, like, there was a time when you go up north and you go, oh, what's the station? Oh, it's the Canoe.
Right.
It's the Moose.
Right.
It's the Leaves or whatever the station's called. And you hear young guys on there going, oh, that was Madonna. She sure looks nice. I wonder if she'd date me. Like, whatever the thing was. And then you go, I kind of love this. It's kind of quirky. It's kind of weird, right? You're up there in a cottage or you're camping and you hear, and then
it's local, yeah.
When people starting a career to move forward and eventually land up in one of the major cities, hopefully the end goal being Toronto. And that is all gone. They've eliminated all of that because it's either an iHeart radio station up in Bracebridge or Gravenhurst or Midland or Penetang, and it's all voice tracked.
It's Roz and Mocha in like 20 different markets across the country.
I suppose. I mean, I don't know the format. I know who they are, but it's like, what is that? What is that when you're sitting there and you're in Huntsville and they go, well, I hate it. And if you're in radio, you realize that they've eaten their young and it's over. That part is over and it's not coming back.
What about Rogers, though? Does Rogers give a shit about sports radio?
Well, you know what? Rogers still has some radio people in there. They still have a little bit of love for it. Now, when it comes to sports radio, the guys who would, the way I would put it is someone like Greg Sansoni, who understands the real workings of sports radio and has a love for it, has to still bow down to those whose last name is Rogers. If it were different, then I think you would find different people on that radio station, including probably someone like myself. But that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen in Calgary. So for all the Calgarians who thought, this is great, here's our chance, you can go back. I'm not getting back in, neither is anybody else. And you have to remember when I make this announcement that's coming up.
Yes. Imminent announcement, ladies and gentlemen.
If my so-called contemporaries, if you looked at all those that I've worked with in sports radio, all these, let's say the last 20 years.
Right.
They're all gone. None of them have really surfaced. And
Greg Brady is the 640 morning guy.
But see, he's the only one left.
Right.
Greg is the only one left, and he's not doing sports.
Right. That's correct.
Anybody else that was in the category that I have always been in? I mean, you got Jim Lang, but he's at the Region doing music. You got Craig
Venn,
and Lucky, but Craig is doing his show in Oshawa. But the core of what was Toronto broadcasting, aside from people saying, "Well, yeah, but you guys all got old. You guys all got older." Well, that is true because that's what happens.
Right.
But for the most part, for instance, in the States, they don't really and then by that measure, then Howard Stern would have been gone a long time ago. Then you wouldn't put these guys. There'd be no sports radio in the States, and yet it's still very successful. A very successful format. Oh God, I almost did. Very successful format. Very successful. That's what we call it. We call it sports radio. Yeah. And here, and I can give you my analogy is this.
Yeah.
They were upset about not making money in the sports format as companies. But what they did was, it's kind of like the guy who buys a Lamborghini and he puts it in his driveway and it drives by and he's bragging about it. Oh, I got a look at the Lamborghini. It's the greatest. They come by and it says for sale like the next day. And they're like, what's the matter? It's a piece of junk. It doesn't work. And then someone's going to say, it does work. You just don't know how to run it. That's sports radio in this country.
Wow. Okay. Now, how long did you run at News Talk Saga 960?
About 4.5 years. Today was my very, very last show. It was the final week, and the finale was literally an hour ago.
The farewell show, as you call it,
which
just
never
happened this morning.
And it never happened. Trust me, in radio, that is not a thing.
Well, let me ask you, when you went, so who's your boss there? Who's that owner you named? I want to get name right.
The Panu is the family that owns it, the Panu family, and then the daughter, Jyoti Panu, was the sort of general manager, and then the guy who was the key in running it was a guy by the name of Praveen, who I brought with me. I'd pronounce his last name, but it's not even close. I mean, it's like Matthew Cause saying an Italian name. It won't be good. And so between those two, they're the ones who ran it, and I was there for basically 4.5 years.
And when you told them, like, when did you tell them that this was your last week on the air? Like how did they take that? Like, did they? Well, for a moment, did they say, "Okay, you're done now, no final show"?
No, because we're very close. When you run a place that's like that, and I always liken it to like a family.
Well, I want to hear more, but now that you're not there, I feel like you can be a little more honest about the place. Like, because from where I sit, you were kind of an outlier in that you seem like a actual real show doing, real interesting broadcasting, and then things around you seemed a little nut hut shit show.
Well, it got goofy. I mean, they're quirky. I mean, there's people who'd never been on the air, people who I don't know where they came from, and they'd be there for a short period of time and they'd leave.
Do they pay to be on? Like, I'm curious.
No.
So okay.
Well, briefly I was, but my money came from sponsorship, from the sponsors who sponsored the show.
No, I mean, like, do people pay to be on the air? Like,
I think there is a program now. They're in a very different place than they were beforehand.
Okay.
But it never became a commercial revenue generating station, which is what my goal was from the beginning. But when COVID came in, they simply weren't going to try after that. And it's more or less a community radio station, a volunteer community radio station. This is what it is.
Okay, so the big question coming up. But I do remember one of your previous 5 visits, your big announcement was that you guys were going to be rated, like you were going to be part of the Numeris PPM radio ratings. Did that ever happen?
No. Once COVID hit, that was it for them. So then they just wanted to survive. And at that point, I'll be honest, during this period of time, I had thought possibly I might end up going back to the Fan 590. At least that was my plan in the discussions that I was having with people.
Okay, slow down. This is a big bomb you dropped there. So did you have like legitimate discussions with any significant decision makers at Rogers about you returning to the Fan 590?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how close did this come to happen?
Close.
How close?
like a thin piece of prosciutto being
really?
Yeah.
So what were you going to be, the morning show host?
Yeah.
Okay, because they put Chris Cuthbert's son in there, Justin, and
but this is long before.
that.
This is when conversations.
Scott MacArthur was there. Who are we talking about here? I'm trying to remember.
It would have been after Scott.
After Scott.
It was a point where I believed that I could have put a team together, and the belief from a lot of them at Rogers would have enjoyed that or liked it. But as it got within the last year and a half, 2 years, it was very apparent that they weren't going to entertain that. And it wasn't just me. It was just...
But it came that close. Hey, so Mike, you came... That's like during the pandemic, I guess. Is it the pandemic that killed this deal? Or was it happening during the pandemic?
No, Pat. It was during kind of. So coming out of it, this is where I think probably from a corporate standpoint, and this is the stations that they have, was that we're not going to spend a ton of money on radio, considering all the revenue generating sources that Rogers has. The last thing they're going to get to is radio, and at the bottom of that pile is sports radio. And so they're going to possibly have these stations on, but the people manning them are not going to be A-list, if you want to put it that way.
They're not making Aaron Davis money.
They won't be making I don't know Pizza Nova money. Like, I mean, it's just they're just not going to do it, nor do they want to reinvest in. And you have to realize it's AM sports. Like, unless you want to do what I had, my experience was in Calgary, for instance, where it made a shitload of money, and Kelly Kirsch, the program director, let me do whatever I wanted to get to that point, to be number one and to get those advertisers. But those guys are all gone too. When I say that the Lamborghini analogy, that's because the guys who knew how to run a Lamborghini and turn it on and put the brakes on, those people are all gone.
Right.
They're all gone.
They went to make some real money, like adult money, so they could live in Toronto, because you can't live in Toronto at $45,000 a year.
No. And so it's just not coming back. And at that point, then I knew I was in trouble. Then I'm in real trouble at that point. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I thought, well, this could be it. Because I don't know how much longer I can stay, doing what I'm doing at
Sauga 960.
At Sauga 960, because they're not going to go back to, they're not spending money either. They're not. And I can't morally or ethically go to people to advertise or keep the advertisers saying, oh, it's going to get real big now. Well, my thought was...
Well, there's hosts on that show that are literal anti-vaxxers. Like, that is part of the problem, trying to, sell a station like that to mainstream advertisers.
Well, you couldn't sell it as... To me, it'd be very difficult.
I mean, McDonald's, for example, or I don't know, Coca-Cola. These big advertisers probably aren't going to touch a station that, like, literally has... some strange conspiracies spilled over the airwaves as if they are facts.
Yeah, all the time. So Petroni goes on, he says what he wants to say, and I just used to laugh because I find it so entertaining. And then you have Richard Serrett, who's now on, and he's got all kinds of stuff going on. But see, that's initially, to me, was the attraction that a lot of people had in the 70s when it wasn't controlled corporately or by the consultants. Guys would come on. Look at Marsden. You look at you go back into the Chum FM area, into the early Q107. You don't have to. I mean, how about CFNY? I mean, you had real personalities saying whatever the hell they wanted to that weren't necessarily the same as the morning show or the afternoon show or the what was going on at nights.
It was eclectic.
So it was kind of eclectic. There was a charm to the weirdness.
It's not cookie cutter, right? Like, it's not like you tune in. You said before, like, nowadays it sounds like there's going to be one broadcast for the country for each style of genre of music or whatever. But like, which, for all its faults, the 960 was not cookie cutter. Like,
no, there is no cutter. There's no many. You can't have that many edges to a cookie.
All right, man. Because of the hard stop at noon, we got to get to the big reveal, but on our live stream, so you're live at live.torontomike.com, but of course, this is being recorded as episode 1304 of Toronto Mike. Again, happy to have you back. I want to just say hello to Dale Cadeau, because he was early on the live stream. I believe he's in BC, of course,
yes.
And sometimes he comes to Streetsville, so you never know where Dale's going to be. But, this is a diehard Mike Richards fanatic, and I just want to say hi to him.
He's a great supporter. I mean, it goes beyond just as a listener support. It becomes more of a personal.
Does he give you
one.
back rubs?
No, but
if you asked him for one, he might.
I'm turning it down, just so you know, of any of those offers you're just talking about. But I mean, and this is the association I've always had with people that do follow the show. It does become personal. I mean, it just does, because the radio star days of people walking down and being all excited, I mean, those are long gone. And if you do have some sense of a following, you might want to show some loyalty the other way. And I find that a lot of guys and women who like the show, let's be honest, mostly guys, and they're like-minded people, so a lot of them end up being friends. A lot of them end up being friends.
Well, it sounds like my show. I mean, we're all collecting, and you're invited too, Mike. This is TMLX 13 is taking place on September 7th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Great Lakes Brewery in Southern Etobicoke. And honestly, I think Dale is actually going to be in BC, but if he was in town, he would be there, and you'd love it, because you know who's going to feed us there?
I think I can be there.
Well, you know who's going to feed us? Anthony Petrucci, his whole family is going to feed us, and Palma Pasta. But you are not leaving here today, Mike Richards, without a large lasagna that's in my freezer right now.
Beautiful. One or?
One for now, but you'll be back. This is your 6th appearance, dude. It's not your final appearance. Come on.
No.
You'll be back. Hopefully it's not your final appearance. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. They're ready for you, Mike.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Even they thought I was dead and buried.
But again, we really did breeze over this, but like since your last visit in 2020, how many surgeries have you had? And again,
I'd probably say 4.
And you're feeling okay? You
I
look
feel
good.
great. It's the best I've felt in decades.
Okay.
Like decades.
Because you can't, I mean, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, but they're not ready to pick up Mike. They got to wait. A few more decades.
Yeah.
But here's a nice measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home, just because you might have to measure something, Mike. You never know.
Outstanding.
Okay.
That's outstanding.
And here, the big announcement coming, but one last note from me, which is that Getting Hip to the Hip, an evening for the Downey Wenjack Fund, is taking place September 1st at 7:30 p.m. at the Rec Room. That's near the Dome there. Go now to gettinghiptothehip.com for details on this awesome evening. I'm going to be there. The promo code to save 10% on these tickets, which are very reasonably priced to begin with. FOTM10, FOTM10. Use that when you get your tickets. Get a couple of tickets. Make it an evening. September 1st, 7:30. There's a Tragically Hip cover band. They're going to do a live recording of Getting Hip to the Hip. Again, I'm going to be there. What more do you want? It's going to be a great time. So Getting Hip to the Hip, September 1st. And then September 7th, which is a Thursday evening, everybody collect at Great Lakes Brewery in Southern Etobicoke for TMLX 13. We'll eat our palma pasta. We'll drink our Great Lakes beer. And, of course, we will salute recyclemyelectronics.ca, because that's where we go to find out where to safely drop off our old electronics, our old tech, our old 8-track players. I know you got a few 8-track players in your garage there, Mike. So recyclemyelectronics.ca, that's where we go. Mike, why are you leaving News Talk Saga 960?
So, as I said about a year and a half ago, when I realized that Toronto radio and corporate radio, and we're talking Rogers, was not going to be possible. And they were very good about it.
And so
very
close.
Honest, and very honest.
Is this the first time you publicly revealed that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did hear rumblings.
Yeah.
Because I had a deep throat called me one day with the details, but I didn't say a word.
It was, but again, so I respect that. Like, that's the way you do business, is the way that it was. And I'll give full credit to Greg Sansoni. I mean, Greg Sansoni was the one that he was your
champion,
and he said, "Yeah, but you got to find another way. Like, basically, you're going to have to find another way because it can't be here." So I'm like, "Well, I'm fucked."
Well, hold on, but why can't? So you've talked a lot about you wanted more than $45K a year because you're a professional adult with many years of experience. But is it possibly more than that? And I'm just saying this as the producer of Humble and Fred, who were bumped off of Sirius XM, and it wasn't a price issue from my perspective, and I have a pretty unique perspective on this. It was a control issue. Humble and Fred were going to do whatever Humble and Fred wanted, and these parts were not as controllable as desired by management. I'm just curious if maybe not only is Mike Richards wanting a decent salary, but I feel like Mike Richards, you're not going to comply with, like, you're going to be Mike Richards. Like, you're not exactly
it's more the latter
controllable asset.
No, it's the latter point that you're making.
I didn't say ass. I said asset. Okay.
But that's the point. It wouldn't even so much the money, because at some point you don't need the ginormous salaries. They're nice, but I'm not really. I've never been a difficult one when it comes to money, which is why I was paid so poorly most of my career. I mean, really bad stuff. But it was it definitely. If we're being honest about it,
we're being honest here.
It's
man.
not the money. It wasn't the money. It wasn't
so.
that they felt they couldn't afford me. It wasn't that. It was what are we getting? Because we've heard some of this. Look, a lot of people called me the Howard Stern of sports. So when you come with that moniker in this culture, if in the woke culture,
it's risky.
Well, they don't want. They're like, well, we can't control. We can't. He had a game show in Calgary called "Gay or Not Gay." We can't have that on the air.
Well, that was the 90s, right?
But
I feel like...
well, no, it wasn't. Actually, it wasn't.
Okay. Never mind. It was 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's Alberta. I can do what I want. So, and they started going back to all these things I'd done 15 years ago. I said, well, I'm not like the comic who doesn't change his act. In fact, I'm far from that. So why are you stuck on this? And then basically said, they just don't want to deal with it. So then I wasn't sure what to do. And I saw a friend of mine, Rod Peterson, doing what appeared to be an internet TV show. I didn't understand what it was. And so I started asking them, and I'd go on these shows. And finally, the guy who ran it is a guy by the name of Darren Dupont. And Darren said, I want to build something here, And we've been waiting actually for a couple of years for you to phone because we thought maybe you'd come out this way and talk to us, at least, in theory. So I said, what is this? Like, is this an internet show only? He goes, well, it was, and now it's not. Well, where is this? Well, it's on the Game Plus network. I go, Game? I'm sorry, I don't know what that was. He goes, no one does. But there is a channel out there that this is going on. So I'm going on the show from time to time, and he said, I just talked to this entity, and they're very interested in what you want to do. So the discussions really started back in November. And then as months moved on, I started to understand who this company was. The company is now called Anthem Sports and Entertainment, and it is owned by Leonard Asper.
Big name.
And Lenny, of course, the son of Izzy, and that's the Global CanWest people,
right,
have this company, and they own a whole bunch of channels. A whole bunch of them, including the Fight Network, Impact, the Game Channel. They own, and now Access, which is a big one. And Steve Harvey is a part of those channels. But they have this Game Plus thing that they really haven't done anything with. But Rod Peterson's on it. So Darren's working on my behalf. A long-time television guy by the name of Jay Murray. Now, Jay Murray is a TV guy, so I don't know TV guys per se. But the Murray brothers have done broadcasting because it came honestly from their father back in the day, going back to the 70s, who had all the rights to every Norman Lear show.
Wow, All in the Family, all of these shows. Wow.
I couldn't imagine. So this is what their little empire was. They had the rights to the Masters for all those years, since 1980. And then eventually it goes to TSN. So here's what I want to do. He gets involved and starts talking to people. But it's kind of not going anywhere. It was just sort of stalling, and now I'm nervous again. And this is I'm saying even in June. So I'm like, well, let's call Ridley because and get those shovels because I think this is getting close. And then out of the blue, the clouds separate and they clear, and
right,
the hand of God comes down. And of course, it's Tony Lucisano, my good pal Luch, who was the salesperson at TSN Digital. He worked for Keith Pelling, made them millions of dollars for years, and who also briefly worked at Rogers. He's also the one who found my doctor, Dr. Bernie Gossovitz, Dr. G, who ends up saving my life. And here comes my fratello, yet another Italian. And he's like, let me get to the bottom of this. He phones a guy named, well, depending on how you pronounce it, Anthony Ciccone. He ran the Score. So he's the president of all these channels at Anthem. So Luch, get a load of this, follow along.
I'm listening.
Luch calls Chooch.
No relation to Madonna, right?
This is the world
that's her last name.
This is where I live. I'm just waiting for Fonzie to show up. This is the life I have. And he then says, well, it's the studio's the issue. And then this is where God goes, okay, Mike, it's been 7 years of you trying to fight your way out of this thing, getting roadblocks and surprise bouncing Bettys wherever you turn, the hurdles, the explosions in the pies, whatever it is. And I get a call from Mike Day and Mark Silver. They're with a company called Home Stand Sports that was started by a company they called The Parlay. Now, The Parlay, because of all the online gaming, started these series of really short videos with really young kids, basically unknowns. And I saw what they did. I didn't really quite understand it at the time. I'm like, what is this? Why? As I talked to them, first of all, Mark Silver is a very high-end professional. So when you talk about the consortium that they did for the Olympics, when it's CBC and Rogers and TSN and CTV, so you would have had Pelly, and then you would have had Mark Silver.
Okay.
So he's a bit of a shooter.
See, that's why gold, silver, that's where he belongs second.
Okay, easy. It was going somewhere. Now we've turned a Ron McLean pun, and now we're going another way. So this is the pyramid, and he's at the top of it. Mike Day was on the digital side at TSN. When Bells first started gutting TSN, they went after that level of professional. So all those that were like the top of that field got gutted. So Mark Silver was one of them, Mike Day another. They get together and form this digital company. They go to me and say, would you be the new face of what we're doing now with Homestand Sports? And I said, okay. And they start talking about all the deep details that they're going to go into when it comes to where you can find it, the digital parts, the social media. Their infrastructure is unbelievable. They team up with Anthem Sports and Entertainment. So I can tell you, starting after Labor Day, at some point, Mike Richards, Raw Mike Richards, will be Canada's sports morning show, 9 a.m. coast to coast on the Game Plus network.
Okay, there's the big announcement. So, okay, I have questions. Okay, so it sounds like, so I'm just trying to understand the relation between Homestand Sports and Anthem Sports and Entertainment. Are they just business partners?
Yes.
But they're two separate... Two separate entities. Okay, so Homestand Sports, is that's going to handle the recording, the studio?
Yes.
Okay, so and then it's Anthem Sports and Entertainment owns Game Plus Network, and that's where you'll be seen live every weekday morning at 9 a.m.
Coast to coast. So those in Calgary that have been waiting a long time means every morning at 7 a.m. your time before you go to work, take your remote, click it on Game Plus, and you can get an hour of the show. It is 1 hour. It's 9 to 10.
Okay, 1 hour, 9, 8. So when we say 9 o'clock across, we really mean 9 Eastern, because this is the center of the universe. Yeah. So Dale Cadeau, for example, in Vancouver, can watch you live at 6 a.m. his time.
That's what it would be. But of course, as we know in this world, and this is why it's different from me, Homestand is concerned almost entirely with what they're building as a digital format. So it's the podcasting. It's where you can watch it. You can watch it anytime you want, on demand.
Right.
It is it's what I never had. I never had a team of people before. And that's, with the people at Anthem, but mostly with, and I'll be honest, the ability and the conversations I've had in the last week with Mark Silver and Mike Day, I've not had this kind of relationship and enthusiasm since I was in Calgary. This is the happiest I've been in 15 years.
Is it fair to say, although you had a home to be on terrestrial radio every single morning, but maybe you didn't get the support you needed at Saga 960? I was
self-sufficient. I had to make it work for myself and at one point, and for Dave Bastel, and that's very difficult. You're a one-man sort of.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
Outlet. I mean, it's very difficult, but in that world, that was very hard for me. I mean, these were 4.5 very tough years, in that the things that I kept trying to make work didn't. Right. They didn't. And they also had a lot of dead ends and a lot of stop signs. So for the first time, and I can say that this channel, although it,
Game Plus Network.
Game Plus is also seen in the States. So when I go on Rod Peterson's show, who goes on from noon till 2, I get comments from people in New York City, in Dallas, in Chicago, in Atlanta, when I go on there, because they've not heard me before and wondered, what the hell is this guy? And this is sort of where that thought, and that's where Darren DuPont said, you get on this thing. And this is what Homestand.
Okay, but I have questions for you, Mr. Richards. If this is going to be a national sports radio show,
television. This is television.
Okay, wait. But part of my ignorance, I'm a digital animal, as you know. I never worked in TV or radio. So is this a streamable? Is there a website where you can stream this channel?
Yes.
So cable cutters, could they bring this in, or do they have to pay to subscribe or something?
This is the digital existence is through Homestand Sports, and I believe it would be their app. As I'm looking at all the things, they will connect through, as they say, various content consumption channels, so it's accessible. It won't be radio where people are going to be looking for, but it's going to be a huge reach through Canada, U.S., and Homestand Sports and their network.
Yeah. Okay. So firstly, I'm excited for you because it sounds like you're going to get the technical and creative support that you said you had back in Calgary, and it sounds like you can be your best self. This is now the next chapter of Mike Richards' broadcasting career on the Game Plus Network. Again, that's new to me, this Game Plus Network. But so you're telling me it's if I have Bell 5 actually, so there is a station maybe an actual station.
So what you'll do? So I'm currently on Rogers.
Yeah,
I think I'm buying Bell. I'm on Rogers.
Well, I'm on Bell. I want to point out, you can't get the upload speeds on Rogers Ignite that you get on Bell 5. It's actually there's a technical reason, but please continue.
Again,
felt I
wrecking
needed
the
to put it
stories. Again, wrecking the story.
It's a two-way street.
So
Let's
I believe, so Rogers is like 525. So basically where you find TSN, whether it's on Rogers or Bell,
Yeah.
that channel will be there. That's where it will
Game
live.
Plus Network.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. There's lots going on here. So will Drake be visiting you?
I'd say no. I'd say no.
Well, I have a surprise for you. No, just kidding. Aubrey Graham, everybody. Okay. Now, so if it's a national sports station, a national sports television network that you'll be on it. And again, so if we miss you at 9 a.m., will I be able to
just go to
watch you on
Homestand.
demand?
Yeah, just go on Homestand.
There's going to be a Homestand Sports, like a website, and I can say, let's watch today's episode with Mike Richards. Is it also going to be a podcast? Like if you're a pod, so you can also subscribe to the podcast and have it drop. So, so we're not missing a beat there. This is exciting news. Now, national sports, I'm curious because you were part of the Team 1050.
Yes.
And part of the problem there was let's face it, we didn't really want 20 minutes on the Jets. And I can't remember if the Jets even existed back then, but we still didn't want 20 minutes on the Flames necessarily either. Like will it still have a Toronto centric, or is it going to be?
No, it will definitely not be Toronto centric. And I'll be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of my shows. If you're going to talk to me about the Core Four, and I got to hear this anymore, I swear, I'm not afraid to die. I've come close to dying.
Yes.
I will. The gun will go right in the ocular cavity, and I will blow my fucking head off if I have to talk about that. I don't mind saying that. I don't know how anybody like. The only other guy I hear sort of has similar sentiments is guys like the O-Dog, where he just can't take it. And I don't, and I hear him, buddy. I understand talking about term and but the average against the cap, kill me. Like I don't care until you win. If you can't win for me in April and May, I don't even want to entertain this conversation.
Right.
So I will talk about the relevance of, I think, what goes on in the sporting world, which I always have. So I'm not going to talk about the fourth. Now, if I want to have, and here's a good story.
Yeah.
If I want to talk about the Leafs, someone who started off with someone who just listened to me. We call him Coach Frank. Frank started off, then he got a couple of spots on us doing some radio stuff. And I will tell you that Coach Frank and his breakdown and understanding of hockey and the Toronto Maple Leafs, don't be surprised when he shows up as one of the insiders, because that's what I had him do. He is better than most that I've heard, because he understands the technique and he understands the X's and O's of the game, but he has a real passion for it, and he is a Leaf fan. But he's a very fair, a very smart guy, and I'm like, look, everyone doesn't have to be from TSN. Everyone's not from Sportsnet. Everyone's not from Fox or ESPN. There are good people. And see, this is where I break away from a little bit of the model, which is having constant insiders is boring. It's boring. It's predictable. And I can't do anything with it. The only kinds of insiders I ever liked were ones that people had trouble with. Pierre Maguire, people would say, oh, I hate Pierre Maguire. Yeah, so you hate him on my show. Well, no, we didn't say that. No, we like him on your show because he talks different. Right. Because he starts talking like Pierre Maguire, the guy that I know that was a Forrest Letterman sport guy in college, who has infinitely all kinds of knowledge that other people I know don't. And I go down the direction. He was never giving me questions. I would just go at him. It could be about the SEC football. It really didn't matter what we would talk about. He's interesting. But controversial. There can be people. There's a guy named Jersey Jim who comes on my show. He is right from New Jersey. He looks like he was probably a roadie for Kiss. Probably sleeps in a dumpster and hasn't changed his pants in a year. And he has more credibility, and he's accredited by the NHL. And he has the weirdest way of talking. He has weird hat, and he'll be listening to this too, going, "Wow, it's not very complimentary what you're saying." His voice isn't like, "Hey, Mike, nice to be with you."
It sounds like you're describing Otto, like the bus driver on The Simpsons.
You know who I think it is? I think it's Peter Criss. I think this really could be Peter Criss. And yet he is so fascinating. People love this guy. They love Jersey Jim. One of the guys, the guy who does my gaming, the betting, Jimmy the Bag. Jimmy the Bag is my bet.
Wow.
King. He is, well, and look, that's not his real name. He's actually a stand-up, was a Yuck Yucks guy for a long time. He is a brilliant person and got a heart of gold. And if you watch Jimmy the Bag, and look, some of these guys like Clark Judge, who was a longtime CBS guy, you would have known him. He's covered NFL for I don't know how many decades, fell in love with Jimmy the Bag and his takes. He said, Mike, this guy's really good. And so we'd be talking about some big issue. Josh Allen, and they got to play the Kansas City Chiefs. And he goes, I wonder what the Bag thinks of that. I wonder what if the bag thing's minus 3.5. I mean, it drop in. That's what will happen with this current show. So it's not going to, and it's only an hour. So when you ask the question about regional sports,
Yeah.
you don't have time to do 20 minutes on anybody.
Right,
Like you got to move this thing along, and there always will be a guest. Now the guesting,
Yeah.
this is where it gets interesting again.
Yeah.
Pull in the Calgary roots. The guy producing the show is Brad Slater. Brad Slater, in my vocabulary, in the Richards lingo, is known as Turtle, as in Turtle from Entourage, because that's when it was on. He looks exactly like Turtle. Turtle will be booking the show, and he's the one who brings in, well, when Dana White or Ice Cube, or it really wouldn't matter. He goes out and gets them. And
So from Drake to Ice Cube, I feel like that's a lateral move.
Well, again, I know you're going back to the Drake
I'm just
thing, and I
keeping
don't
it.
even know one of his songs, but I know he does talk about a cell phone in one of them. So
Yes, Hotline Bling. Hotline Bling.
that's what it's called?
Yeah. You used to call me
Okay,
on my cell phone.
Yeah, I heard
It's a good
that
jam.
once, yeah. What's the next one? Something about the facts? I don't know anything of this music. I really don't.
What is your jam of choice these days? Like if you want to shout out an artist that you've been pumping in the car there on your drives.
I've really, maybe it's just because it's a security thing for me, a security blanket.
Can I guess?
It's not a band. It's an era.
You've gone back to the 70s.
80s.
80s. Okay. And any particular artists?
All over
All
the
of them.
place. No, generally.
REO Speedwagon?
No, see, that one gets on my nerves.
Foreigner? Too
Foreigner,
soft?
sometimes I like a little bit.
Right.
But you have to, when you go to my house, you go in the backyard, you'll hear everything. It's like,
Def Leppard?
Def Leppard, but you'll hear Cuban music.
Wow.
You'll hear a lot of salsa back there. You'll hear a lot of, just because of my obsession with that part of the world.
Here's a big question for you, and I know you're an honest guy, so we're going to hit it. Is the Game Plus Network paying you a salary, or are you...
No, this will all be me to start. This will all.
So
be
they're
me.
giving you the platform, and then
Yes.
you're selling your own ads.
Yeah, which has been very positive, because most of the stuff they'll mostly be nationals.
I have a crazy, ridiculous question. So if you're producing your own content, and I know now you're getting some support, which sounds like that might have answered my own question, but
Yeah.
you are Mike Richards, and people who love you want Mike Richards. Dale Cadeau is going to follow you to the edge of heaven here. So, theoretically, couldn't you just follow the Humble and Fred model and just be a podcast?
No.
No.
But that's not where I'm going to live. Like I think for the audience that I've created, and let's put it this way, I'm going to be the only sports talk show in the country. Now think about that. It's like there might have been competition at one point. Well, you're going to be up against I don't know, Tim and Sid, or are you going to be up against Off the Record, or you're going to be up against Bob McCowan? None. They're all gone. None of those things exist.
No.
And they wouldn't exist. It wouldn't have bothered me in the first place because I don't see competition in that way. It doesn't really faze me. So unlike Humble and Fred, who have it's a talk show, right? It's just
They talk for 90 minutes to 2 hours.
whatever they want to do.
Right.
This is specific to an audience that has been completely ignored by the corporate world, the sports media world. TSN is never going back to something like this. Rogers just dumped Tim and Friends, so that's gone. They don't want to put money into it. So all of a
they
sudden,
said as much, right? Like they said, if you're not our core, our broadcasts and what decorates, is around these live events we present, like Blue Jays and hockey, et cetera, then we're not putting money in it.
there is a massive audience in the 25-54 that are starving, just like they do in the States. What do they give you? Well, I mean, if we're going older, you're taking a look at Dan Patrick,
Sure.
Colin Cowherd, those sort of things. But I'm not that style. It's closer to that, I guess, to a degree. But then it's going to have my edge to it in the way I present it, the way I talk to my guests, and the content you're going to see. And it won't be like someone in Calgary or someone in Sydney, Nova Scotia, or someone in Red Deer is going to sit there and go, how come he's talking about that? Because that never happened to me.
And also, you're going to probably be visited by, I'm thinking maybe Bob Cole and Victor Newman. Are these folks showing up?
Yeah, they're I'll have to figure out a way how to do it. We did when we had the hour show, and it was Dave and myself, how to get those personalities on. But yeah, and the fact that Mike Babcock is back in the league,
Right.
that's huge for the show, because we had this idea, and actually it was Bastel's title. He said you should have that segment with him every day called "What I Would Have Done." So when you come in, you look at the Leafs and they lose 4-3 to New Jersey. And then you'd come in and say, what I would have done is what they done in the back end. They shouldn't have done. You take a guy like Marnie, you take 34, and you have him play like pros, and they get her done. And you
It's quite the Babcockian delivery there. Quick hits from you, Mr. Richards, if you don't mind, since I have you trapped in my basement right now. And you got to earn that lasagna here. But this is a big announcement, so I'm excited for you, and I'll be following the adventures. Game Plus Network. The day after Labor Day?
Yeah, so it could move in there, dependent, but basically after Labor Day, at the start of the NFL season, that's where you're going to find it.
Okay, that makes complete sense too. Okay, a lot of people go back to their commutes and stuff too, and they can Bluetooth you in there, and that'll be great. Let me ask you quick hits on these things. So Jay and Dan broke up because Bell Media said goodbye to Dan O'Toole. And meanwhile, Tim and Sid broke up because Sid went to Breakfast Television. Then, like you just said a minute ago, Tim and Friends had a little run, but then they said, okay, we're done with this. Why is it that these dynamic duos on the competing sports networks couldn't make it? Is that just because they cost too much money and didn't generate enough revenue? Like, why is there no more Tim and Sid and no more Jay and Dan?
Well, I think they're two different scenarios when I look at Tim and Sid. Sid had the opportunity to get out of something that he knew was going to end.
Right.
And so he went to a Breakfast Television format, which to me is great. I mean, compared to talking sports, I mean, Sid would, if he was here right now, would I'm sure he would agree with me saying it is so much better to sit there and talk about life events. You have a slight opinion. You don't have, Stu from Scarborough livid because you said that Morgan Riley was a fifth or a sixth line D on any other team, right. And then you got a half an hour of this stuff, man. What about the core four? What about John Tavares? Don't you think? Okay, just make it stop. He doesn't have to deal with that, so that was good for him. For Tim, that put him in a tough spot only because you are dealing with a company that probably doesn't want to pay for what you're doing.
Do you think his days are numbered there, Tim?
I think anyone who's in a sports format, and I'll be honest, as a male, good luck with that. Because I cannot go and there's like, hey, do you want to speak to a group of radio kids? What are we taking? Delusional 101? Like, let's take are you taking a course on lying? Right. Because I can't tell. And certainly young men, I can't tell them you've got a great job, because it used to be there's the desk, there's the sidelines, there's all these things that was just basically male dominated. Right or wrong, I'm telling you what the jobs were.
Right.
Now that's not available to you anymore. So you say, well, they all want to be the next Mike Richards on the radio. Well, they're not. That's not going to happen. Now, the podcast thing and people I know are all in love with it. Well, you know how hard that is to be and to monetize that. So they're apparently isn't it like 18 million podcasts or whatever the actual number is? Like, it's just insane. It's insane.
Sure. At least 1 million, yeah, sure.
So it's like, okay, you're going to have to find your way, but it goes back to the same old basis for being someone that someone else would listen to, which is, you have to have, hopefully, some broadcast skills. Hopefully you have some understanding on why someone would sit in their car or their basement or at the cottage or in the kitchen listening to a podcast. And for the most part, the ones that are, I'm watching my son who does nothing but that.
Right.
Most of the podcasts and he's 33. These guys are really well known. It's Sebastian Maniscalco. It would be a Joe Rogan. It would be Dax Shepard. It would be, go through it all. They're really well-known people who also bring on other really well-known people. Your format is great because you found a niche where you're incredibly kind to an industry. So it's radio and television and music, but it's the heart of it is radio because you liked it and were interested in the personalities and the lives that surround the voices that you hear. And so, there's a dignity that you have gone about. It's very dignified. There's a lot of respect that you give to all of us. And it gives us a voice to maybe tell some of the true stories that don't get out there about ourselves personally, which a lot of Brad, I talk about everything, but that's a rarity. That's why I ended up calling it Raw Mike Richards. It's not that I think I want to go and people are, is that like Howard Stern? Are you trying to be a shock jock? I've never wanted to be that. Now, Howard Stern's blueprint on how to be successful, 100%. It's just you have to be able to have some of the skills to be able to do what he does in order to achieve some of these successes. But to be like another him or another anybody, again, there's the huge mistake. So you hear these podcasts, and it's nothing but profanity for like an hour. And I'm like, it's because they think it's cool and fun. I can't listen to that for an hour.
Right.
Can't.
Right. It's lazy. I understand. Now, I want to ask you a couple more quick hits here before we get back to the Game Plus Network. One is that kind of recently, and a few months ago, there was a few days where O-Dog wasn't on the air, and he was in town and available, but couldn't talk about it, and it was kind of there was a buzz about it, and then he came back. Do you know what was that just a contract negotiation?
I have no idea.
You have no idea about
like
O-Dog.
that's a zero for me because I haven't talked to those guys in quite a while. So I have no idea. I knew that he was off. You could see it on people talking about it on the internet or whatever.
Sure, and he was in town because people were spotting him and reporting it to me like we were an O-Dog watch.
Yeah, look, anything to do with Bell, I don't put anything by them. So if someone has a problem with those aliens, then you're full marks for not even want to be in there because I feel sorry for people who work for them.
Yeah, but you got to work somewhere, right? Like,
it'd be like being the Hebrew slaves working on the pyramids and working for, the Pharaoh. They'd say to themselves, do you think it's going to be better? I don't know. We've been here a long time. It's like we got to be, I don't know. Someone's got to come and set us free.
Oh, no. It's quite the analogy. All right, I got to ask you about your old buddies. So you mentioned earlier in this episode, you mentioned Jim Lang and you mentioned Craig Venn. You, of course, were very close with your old buddy, John Derringer.
Yes.
We have not talked since Derringer Gate. Okay, so here you are. You're unfiltered. You're raw, as we say, and real talk. Did you witness Derringer tearing crossing the line with workplace bullying during all your years working with John Derringer?
So what I'm about to say, and probably how I say it, may not be popular with the masses. And it goes kind of like this.
Yep.
So when you come from showbiz in sports, you tend to understand what makes those people work. What makes a good goalie, a good quarterback, what makes a great stand-up, what makes a great lead singer. It's usually what is surrounded and what you have surrounded them with. So if you understand what the math is, and Andrew Dice Clay is going on stage, probably what I'm not doing is putting someone from Lilith Fair to open up with him. When you start mixing volatility with those that don't fit into the world that makes them who they are, I challenge that you have made a very bad decision that it's going to end very badly. So when I worked at the Fan with Jim and Craig and myself, look, John would be the first one to tell you there were certain issues that he had personally that he had to fight. So there was some of that I'd never quite seen before. But John and I were close, and he could always count on me as he could count on Jim and Craig. Did temperatures rise from time to time? Well, it never would. No, look, it's an easy out, but it never was at me. So I didn't have that. Occasionally, was there heat? Well, Craig and Jim could answer to that, but there would be. But I also think at that time, John was trying to personally find himself and get his feet back on the ground. That's my take on that. The moment he goes to Q107 and they start throwing in female co-hosts, I'm not protecting bullies, and I'm certainly not protecting the way that John had probably gone about it and how he made those women feel, because it's heartbreaking. Like, it's really very disturbing what happened to those women when I hear what Jennifer went through and the others that came forward.
Jackie Delaney, Jennifer Valentine, Maureen Holloway. There's others. I'm not sure if they went on the record, but others we know and love. Basically, it sounds like almost every single female co-host has a story.
They got slaughtered. They got emotionally denigrated. They got humiliated. Their self-worth.
Andrea Ruse, I want to shout her out.
Andrea, who's awesome. I've worked with her.
Yeah.
Probably worked with all of them actually that you mentioned, and they're all in their own rights really.
Colleen Rushholm,
and these are talented women, right? These are women in the environment that would be the most beneficial to them, but they put them into in with the gladiators, and like I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. Now people say, "Oh, so you're defending John?" No, I think John probably looks back on all those transgressions, and I'm sure there's times sleeping may not be easy for him. He has daughters, married. You cannot, I don't believe, exist on this planet unless you're a psychopath and it doesn't bother you. You're a sociopath, it doesn't bother you. And I think I look at the mix that they tried to make in there. I could have told you that would have happened before it even did.
But Mike, it sounds like you're saying that it's management's fault for putting a woman in the booth.
Yeah, I would say that.
That
I would say
sounds like you're excusing the behavior because if he can't control himself of a woman in the booth, that's on him.
But see, that also, his anger. I mean, you have to talk to, again, Craig Venn and Jim Lang, because they got it pretty good too.
So it's not even a gender thing.
So at some point
He's got to be alone in that booth like some kind of a lion in the cage or something.
Some of the talents that we've had in this world, got news for you, they're not the greatest people. Ty Cobb murdered a guy. You know, there are athletes that you could meet and you're like, I wish that never happened. And I've met some of them.
O.J. Simpson is a good example because he was a hell of a running back, but as a human being, he murdered 2 people.
Yeah. That's always bad in my book. The stabbing.
Yeah,
What I'm saying about John is, I think that if you're management and you truly care about the environment that you are responsible for, then if John is acting out, okay, what do you want to say? So if he's
behaving badly,
he's humiliating these individuals, and mostly we're talking about the women, but it wasn't, from what I understand,
right,
only to that. That's when they should have stepped in and probably fired the guy.
Right.
Like fired him.
They kind of enabled him. Like it sounds like they protected and enabled him. And it does sound like management is getting off a little scot-free on this one, considering, I mean, I know the names and many of them are still employed on big morning
I would
shows
agree
in
with
the
that.
market.
I would completely agree with that. And if I'm talking to John,
a lot of blame to be shared here.
But I would be sitting there and I feel bad about the absolute car wreck that it became and that company allowed to continue. How does it go from 5 female co-hosts? Like after the first one goes through crying every day and probably being, as I said, dismantled emotionally. How does that go on beyond 1? That's your blame.
Right.
And so I feel very bad about it. I said those women, and I said, I know most of them, some of them personally, are tremendous people with some, I'll be honest, compared to today, they are like really great skills that could have been used in a much more friendly environment, maybe even with their own shows, was never even thought of. Why? And that's where I get back to the people who are given the keys to the car aren't really good at what they do. Radio isn't necessarily as cutthroat as people make it to be. Now, the end game is that it's cutthroat and murderous. But for me, at the heart of it, after about somewhere maybe in the late 90s, I think the talent in the managerial pool got very shallow. It got very thin. These so-called radio experts, these they listen to the consultants and they go to the right meetings and it just became, to me, a high level of mediocrity, I guess is the way I'd put it. They're all very weak in terms of how they see things. I was lucky because when I went to Calgary and had Kelly Kirsch, but even still, by the time I leave in 2010, you could feel it. You could feel the ebb changing towards a freedom that we had as performers and the bean counters, and it just started to swallow it up, and you knew something was going to happen. I never would have thought sports radio would be strangled. Like, let's be clear, there will be no sports radio at some point. It will be wiped out. If you want to have Overdrive and TSN wants to keep it on some level, that's up to them. Maybe they'll find a way. Maybe it's a digital thing. I don't know. But as a radio, have you seen the ratings on these stations? I mean, they rhyme with Schneero.
No one's listening.
This is it, and it's very hurtful. I mean, you look at the guys, and they said Greg Brady was number one, smart enough to be able to go to 640, and you got to be smart to do the kind of radio that he does. I wouldn't last 5 minutes on his show. He talks more than me, by the way. I talk a lot. Greg Brady talks more than me. But he found a way to survive. And to me, I think, as I said, I look at the new television show and how it's come together. I mean, God bless Homestand Sports for coming up and basically supporting me in what I do. And they have a firm belief of where this is going to go in Canada and the U.S. And I said, it just so happens that Anthem kind of believes the same thing and is going to give me a national TV show to do that.
Is there any term here? Like, I mean, because you're not necessarily controlling your own destiny here because you're not going fully independent here. You got Homestand Sports and you got Anthem Sports and Entertainment. Like, I want to make sure they give you enough time to succeed. What I've noticed is nowadays, like, we don't see a big development. Within 6 months, we're moving on with a different idea. Like, are they going to give you enough runway to fulfill your plan
Yeah,
here?
and see, that's the difference between that and the corporate world. Is that we don't see anything, or we don't like they really don't put anything into it, and somehow they want something out of it. And so, to me, this is. To be independent is one thing, but if you solely think you can do it on your own, that was my initial problem over the last 7 years because I've been doing it as a one-man band. The difference in this scenario is that Homestand, I mean, there are salespeople across the country. I mean, there are so many associations and sponsorships that I've been working on that I never would have thought of. But for instance, a guy like Mark Silver would say, look, I know you want, it's probably your age group. I see what you want to do, and you want everyone to go to Game Plus, and you want to see all these numbers nationally and so on. He goes, you realize whatever number you get on television is going to look like a crumb compared to what you're going to get on the platforms we're giving you. You're going to get an enormous number from the way, because these are real super smart people. And with a guy like Mike Day, this is all he's done. So I never had that before. I didn't have that in Calgary. I had Kelly Kirsch. I didn't have a group of these guys who were the top of their field. Right. So I kind of have a little bit, when you think of the two best guys from TSN at what they did, and then the two best guys from The Score. That's Ciccone, and that's a guy named Chad Midgley, who actually Chad oversees Game Plus. On top of that, you got a young guy like Darren DuPont, who has DuPont Sports. He's the one who looks after Rod Peterson. They have made a go of this thing. Yeah. It is all coming together it took a very long time in a very strange way. But what else would it be from me? I mean, they don't open the front door.
Easy for,
I'm not getting the front door. I'm like, I'm not Rodney Dangerfield. Hey, take it easy. But I do know that I've had to work for a living, and most people are retiring at this point. My wife's retired. My friends are all retiring, and I'm now, like back when I'm 25, going into this new thing with all this new stuff, with all these new people, and a hell of a lot of enthusiasm, with the best health I've ever had. Like, I do feel
that's everything, man.
Like I did back in the 90s. For the most part, I kind of looked like I did in 1990. So,
looking great, man. And I root hard for you, Mike. I love you're just a good time, Charlie. Like, you're here for a good time. You're interesting. You crack open a Great Lakes beer at 10 in the morning, and I'm rooting for you. I'm going to find this Game Plus network. I'm going to check this out. I hope it's not too long away. The Labor Day is right around the corner.
So it's back to the sports calendar. And so for those wondering when I say that, so it's when the kids go back to school. So the day after Labor Day, usually a Tuesday. Until
Labor Day is always a Monday.
Until the end of June. That's your calendar.
Okay.
And so I am starting when sports start. For the most part, when sports radio was supposed to start, I'm back on in the normal schedule, back to the main stage. That's what I've done.
Have you talked to John Derringer since the Jennifer Valentine video dropped? Okay.
No, I have not. And probably
he's laying pretty low, eh?
Well, it's certainly understandable, and I wouldn't know what the headspace is. I couldn't know what that is.
Game Plus Network, big announcement. Mike Richards, love it. How do you say the name Mookie Wilson?
Mookie Wilson?
Say it again.
Mookie Wilson.
So moo like a cow, right? Mookie. I got some flack in my last episode with
You mean Mookie Wilson from Calgary? You're talking.
No, Mookie Wilson from the 89 Blue Jays.
Oh, I see. You're going back that far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
what are people saying? Mookie Wilson?
I know. I think I might be saying it wrong, but I said it several times because I was chatting with Ben Nicholson-Smith on Monday, and I said Mookie Wilson many times. I think I'm saying
Mook, like a mook, which is not good in Italian.
Mookie.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it. I got multiple people telling me they were fascinated by my pronunciation of Mookie Wilson. I will work on it. One of many words I need to work on. Thank you, Ford Canada. They put me in an Expedition Max so I could go camping with the kids at Pinery this week, and it was a lot of space. And it was
Did you like the Pinery? Did you like it?
Love it. Yeah. I go every year. So it's I've been going since I went as a teenager, but then I started going again when my oldest turned 3. Actually, we went to Killarney, and then we went to... But bottom line is, I've been there maybe 20 times or so in the last 20 years, and we always love it. The Pinery's amazing. And the expedition I drove this week, thanks to Ford Canada, was amazing. Mike Richards, you're an amazing FOTM. I really hope you can make it out to TMLX 13. And
I can, and I can tell because I know what that weekend is. That's a Friday, right?
that's a Thursday.
Oh, it's a Thursday? Okay, well, I will be there.
I'll remind you, because if I can promote this as Meet the Game Plus Network's own Mike Richards.
Brought to you by Homestand Sports.
Brought to you by Homestand Sports. Let me know if anything I can help you out with in this consortium here, because you got some big pros on it. But I'm always here to help you. You know that.
You're looking for work now? Is that what this has become?
Hey, this is the gig economy. It's all about cobbling together gigs. On that note, the reason we're not going 2 or 3 hours, I could keep talking to you about all this stuff, but Donovan Bailey's going to be at that door in 5 minutes. So, he was once the world's fastest man.
Oh, well, if you look at the pictures, you can see me at Y95 holding up the Donovan Bailey street sign.
Well, maybe if you guys cross each other in the driveway right now,
I'm hoping
I'll
we
snap
do.
a picture.
Yeah.
Him and Jason Porwando. You know Jason?
Really? What, is he coming in today?
Well, he co-hosts Donovan's show, so they're both going to be here.
that.
Yeah, running things. It's a great show, and it happens down here. You got a great show. So is the name going to be? What's the name of your show?
Mike Richards.
Raw
I'm not changing
Richards.
that. That part is done well.
And will you miss Saga 960?
Oh, you know what? You're going to hear me probably from time to time. I will never lose my association with it. So when they need help, or probably when you hear a big interview, for instance, I'll be talking to a lot of the live golfers. Yeah, you heard me.
Wow.
So when I interview Phil Mickelson, and that is coming, then don't be surprised that shows up on.
It's a big name.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
Dropped
yeah.
a big one there.
Yeah.
Save it for the end. Okay, don't bury the lead. And that brings us to the end of our 1,304th show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Mike is at Raw Mike Richards. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Don't leave without your lasagna. Getting Hip to the Hip is at Getting Hip Pod. Get your tickets now. September 1st is coming soon. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. The Moment Lab are at The Moment Lab. Mike, let me know if you want me to introduce you to the guys at The Moment Lab. They have a great team of PR experts ready to help you out. And Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. You won't need them for many, many decades to come.
No. I mean, they can stop counting on that money because it's not happening.
You're not going to be there anytime soon.
Never.
I'm back Sunday night. So Sunday night at 7 p.m. for another episode of Toast with Rob Pruce and Bob Willett. We'll be live at live.torontomike.com, but that'll be episode 1305. See you all then.
Going down on you.